Good afternoon, India. Good evening, America. You're watching our comprehensive coverage of the US presidential polls only on Doordarshan India. The projections are coming in and Joe Biden is saying that he's on track to win, and he is, as per reports, expected to speak at 5:30 Greenwich Mean Time on Wednesday. That is 11 p.m. our time, Indian Standard Time on Wednesday today. Donald Trump has tweeted he will be making a statement tonight. A big win, he says. Our team of reporters in the US are tracking every move in the Biden and Trump camps and the trends and projections as well. Domain experts and former ambassadors will be joining us. I'm Munmun Bhattacharya. With me is my colleague Ramesh Ramachandran.
Thank you, Munmun. Hello, viewers. It's noon India time or 6:30 GMT, and it's just after 1:30 on the US East Coast. And let me bring you up to date with the latest tally. Biden is 210 as against 213 for President Donald Trump. It's neck and neck, 213 to Trump and 210 electoral votes to Biden. And we'll be joined by a galaxy of experts, including Ambassador Neeraj Srivastava, Ambassador Anil Trigunayath, Dr. Harinder Sekhar, Ambassador Meera Shankar, and Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni on this special broadcast. Also joining us from the ground will be our colleagues Ira Spitzer in San Francisco and William Denslow in Wisconsin. They'll get you all the latest from the ground as we speak. But first up, let's take a look at the headlines this hour. It's neck and neck between Donald Trump and Democratic challenger Joe Biden. Trump ahead in battleground states of Florida, Pennsylvania, and North Carolina. Biden leads in California, Arizona, and Iowa. Polling closes all across the U.S. The final tally of votes to get delayed in view of the overwhelming numbers of postal ballots, especially in the states such as Pennsylvania, which allow postal votes even after the poll date. Even as America votes, both sides also gear up for a prolonged legal battle arranged for a battery of lawyers. Trump camp has already declared the intention to question the postal ballots, especially in Pennsylvania. Both Donald Trump and Joe Biden to address the nation later in the night. President Trump hosts election night party at the White House amid unprecedented security arrangements. And DD India gets you extensive coverage of the US presidential elections like never before. Get all the news, views and analysis on just one platform, DD India, and its social media handles as well.
So our guests have now joined us. Ambassador Meera Shankar, if you are with us, former Indian ambassador. Ambassador Shankar, does it look like a prolonged legal battle going forward, considering what Donald Trump has already tweeted? He's claimed victory, and he is claiming that votes are being cast even after polling hours have gotten over. It's a big allegation from the Trump camp, though Biden says we are on track to victory.
Well, we'll try to get that link fixed with Ambassador Shankar in just a bit. But I can see Ambassador Anil Trigunayath with us. Ambassador Trigunayath, if you are with us, your thoughts on the trends and results coming in this moment. It's neck and neck. Trump slightly ahead of Biden in the electoral vote count.
Yes, Ramesh, thank you for having me today on this show.
Welcome, Ambassador.
This is indeed a very interesting election, and in fact it has become far more interesting because President Trump is there, which shows the tremendous interest that we have in India also about these elections, unlike previous times. What we are seeing now is there are two things that are very clear. One is that there are deep-seated divisions in the American vote bank, and secondly, there is a biggest problem is with the various surveys and polls that came out. Quite a few of them are proving wrong to a great extent. If one were to see what is happening, because it seems like the Democrats were greatly counting on the mishandling of COVID-19 by President Trump, but that appears to be the secondary issue compared to the issue of economy. And fortunately for Trump, the economy has done reasonably well in the last quarter. As you must have seen, the 33% growth or something like that, that's giving him a handle. Secondly, a large number of the black voters have gone there. Hispanics are voting for Trump. That's how he has won Florida once again. And so the key states are, some of the key states are still there. But it looks like that it is going to be a very, very close call. And it will take some time before really one would have a firm outcome, and whether that outcome will be acceptable if Trump loses it remains
In fact,
to be seen.
Ambassador, even as we speak, the tally has changed and flipped once again. Biden ahead of Trump now as we speak. Biden on 220 electoral votes and Trump at 213. So it's neck and neck, as you say, and it's too early to call one way or another, isn't it?
Yes, very true. Because see that like some of the key states are yet to come. The Texas has the largest number of votes, 38.
Right.
Now that will decide, and which is looks like going red. Then Pennsylvania is 20, but Pennsylvania will also have very many absentee ballots for the mail-in voting, which Trump is trying to somehow contain. And the problem is that there are more than 200 legal challenges that have been brought in about, and one does not know how that will play out eventually, because that depends exactly on how the legal system works. But today, as you know, in the Supreme Court, Trump was able to get his way in.
Yes.
And one really does not know how the smooth transition of power will take place.
Absolutely. Stay with us, Ambassador Trigunath. Let's go across to Ira Spitzer, who's joining us from San Francisco now in California. Well, Ira, how is the picture looking to you? It's a seesaw that is continuing. Earlier, Trump was leading in terms of electoral votes. Now, in a matter of 5-6 minutes, that tally has changed. Biden is leading with 220 electoral votes, and Trump is trailing with 213. Popular votes, 2 are in Biden's favor as compared to Trump. Do you expect the seesaw to continue over the next few hours, maybe the next 24 hours as the counting progresses, or do you expect trends to consolidate from here?
Well, right. It has turned out to be as dramatic an election as anyone could have expected, at least from what we've seen so far tonight. And I think the key aspect here, as you alluded to, is the fact that we likely won't have a clear result by the end of the night. This is expected to stretch out through the next few days even. And the reason for that is the difficulties in counting some of these mail-in ballots, which have scrambled this election somewhat with the prevalence of mail-in voting due to the coronavirus pandemic. But I think when you look at what we do know so far, both candidates have some reason to be a bit optimistic. Trump outperformed in certain states such as Florida, and also has held key states for him, such as Texas, it appears, at least from what we know now from those projections. However, the Biden camp, according to other media projections here, is on track to win the state of Arizona. That's a key swing state, and I think when we learned that did perhaps shift the momentum in the direction of Joe Biden, or at least the campaign perhaps sensing that they did have a very realistic shot here. We heard from Joe Biden not long afterwards, going before the cameras, saying that we were going to win this thing, projecting an optimistic tone. And we also heard from the president, who says that he plans to address the nation at some point over the course of the night here. But he tweeted and said that the Democrats were trying to steal this election. Now, Twitter flagged that tweet as being misinformation, election misinformation, or based on unconfirmed reports. But certainly, I think that's a sign of what's to come here in the United States, a very contested and perhaps a bitter fight to the end for every last vote.
Ira, you referred to the exchanges between Biden and Trump. Biden holding an in-person media conference and a statement, while Trump stuck to Twitter. Now, Biden interestingly said that this ain't over till it's over, so hang in there, we're going to win eventually, while Trump claiming that, accusing the Democrats of quote-unquote ceding the election, as you said there. But how did Trump's speech go down with his constituents where you are in California? Because this is a blue state, and did it resonate well with his base, so to speak, where you are? Ira, if you can hear me, I wanted to ask you about the two exchanges between President Trump and Joe Biden. Biden holding an in-person media conference, whereas Trump tweeting as usual on Twitter. But given the fact that Biden addressed the media conference and put out a statement, how did that statement did that resonate with his constituents, his base in California, where you are? I believe we've lost that link with Ira, but we'll try to fix that video link with Ira in San Francisco in just a bit. But if I can ask the producers to let us know who all have joined on this special broadcast. We know Ambassador Trigunath is with us. What about Ambassadors Neeraj Srivastava, Ambassador Meera Shankar, and Dr. Harinder Sekho and General Kulkarni as well? But if I can go across to Ambassador Trigunath for the moment now. Ambassador Trigunath,
I don't know if you asked me another question. Apologies if you did. If you want to try and call me back.
Right. Ira, if you are still with us, I meant to ask you about your references to the two statements that we heard from the two camps so far. Biden addressing an in-person conference, whereas Trump tweeted as usual. Now, how did Biden's statement go down with his constituents in California, which is primarily and predominantly a blue state? Right, we'll fix that link with Ira. Apologies to our viewers. We'll try to fix that link with Ira in just a bit. But if I can go across to our guests on the panel, including Ambassador Trigunath for the moment. Ambassador Trigunath, looking at the numbers and the lead so far, and that it is a deeply, hotly contested election as well. We would not know the official results till a few days from now. But the fact that both leaders have said that they will be addressing the nation tonight, later tonight, what can we expect from the two camps, the Biden camp and the Trump camp? Do you expect anyone at all to have a concession speech, so to speak?
Well, I don't think that there will be a concession speech tonight.
Okay.
Unless there is a major challenge, a major change in the trends that we're seeing from the battle states. But what you will see the repeat of
audio link or video सब कुछ
Well, apologies, Ambassador. We're having some technical issues, glitches, but we'll fix that. But please carry on for the moment.
Yeah. So what we can see is what you have just told about, that he's in Pennsylvania and he spoke from there, Vice President Biden. Obviously, they like to hang on till, it's not over till it's over.
Indeed.
So obviously, the both sides will continue to claim victory until then. And I doubt very much that unless really there is a drastic change in the pattern that we are seeing right now, they are virtually neck to neck, 224 to 213 at the moment, and a couple of other states will come, so they'll go up and down. But the key states will really decide on which way it is going to go, and that is Texas, California, and Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Which will have some kind of deciding factor. So once that happens, secondly, you are seeing now the other important elections that are happening are that of congressmen and senators and some governors, and they are also going neck to neck actually. It's pretty close. So that is something also will decide the fate of the next president, whosoever it is.
Absolutely.
That whether the Senate is red or the blue, or the Congress is blue or the red. So it's a mix of the things that will decide. But I don't think there will be a concession speech by the evening unless there is a drastic change.
Fair enough. Point taken, Ambassador Trigunath. But I'm told Ira is back with us from San Francisco. Ira, if I can quickly ask you, how did Biden's statement go down with his constituents where you are in California?
Well, I think for the people who have been following this election closely, Joe Biden's supporters, that statement was a real beacon of hope for those people who had really been starting to get demoralized by the idea of another Trump victory. I think certainly many Democrats were having flashbacks to the 2016 election where they went into it very confidently for the most part, and then just bad news after bad news from the Hillary Clinton race against Donald Trump. So I think to see Joe Biden come out and express that optimistic tone, whether it was warranted or not, did have a significant effect on his supporters and feeling like, okay, we can go to bed, we can, I don't think breathe easy, but at least we can go to bed knowing that there is a chance, maybe even a good chance, that Joe Biden could still become the next president of the United States.
Ira, we saw in 2016 how the battleground states sealed the fate of Donald Trump then. And it's all red territory this time around as well. Florida, Texas, Ohio are going to the Republicans, in North Carolina as well as in Georgia. Republicans are leading in Iowa. We are seeing a lead that Republicans have. So the red territory is what the toss-up states are looking like. Could this also pave
I was
the
kind of
way
wondering about that.
to victory of Mr. Trump?
I didn't see the Facebook post, but you know, we're going to win this election. You know, that's kind of towing the line of declaring victory. You know, I mean,
Absolutely. But
yeah.
I understand what you're saying. I'm just saying that the toss-up states, 6 of them that make up for 100 electoral votes, all of them are showing that Republicans are leading there.
So the IFB cut off again, but maybe
Okay.
they'll call back. But yeah, maybe now's a good time to.
Okay, Ira, we'll try and connect with you. There's an connectivity issue that we are facing with Ira.
that's a
Let's
good one.
go
No, that's
back
a good
to
one.
Ambassador Trigunayat. Ambassador Trigunayat, like I was asking Ira, that in 2016, the red territory, which was the battleground states, paved the way for Donald Trump's victory. We are looking at a similar color across the toss-up states. What can we conclude at this point in time?
So let's see. Yeah, all you need is a. Oh no, I have it. I have it over here.
Right, we'll ask our producers to get back to Ira in just a bit. Let's go to Ambassador Trigunayat for the moment. And we are told, we're also joined by Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni as well. General Kulkarni, if I can come to you now, since we are talking to you for the first time on a special broadcast, your opening comments on the way this election has shaped so far. It's neck and neck, nobody is calling it one way or another. Your thoughts on the early results and trends as we speak. You know, it's neck and neck, Biden 220, Trump 213 as we speak.
I would look at it this way, that to India as such, it
Sure.
really won't make much of a difference. Of course, we have a comfortable relationship with President Trump. We also have a very comfortable relationship with Mr. Biden, because he was the vice president when all of this, the entire security relationship with the Obama administration, 2014, 2015, and then he carried on forward. So as a government, as a nation, I think we seem to be having excellent relationship with both, whoever could be the president.
Right.
And obviously, if we are just not is a relationship which is a mutual relationship, a bilateral relationship, in which we all see that there are changes likely to occur in the world over, and obviously you have democracy, all the democracies coming together and ensuring that China is not necessarily to have its way and not become a wolf warrior, a predator, and to see to it that it goes along expansionist policy. So at least in that sense, I would look at it this way, that whoever be the president in America, India still stands to benefit, primarily because it's a total relationship of give and take. It's just not taking, it's just not giving. And keeping in view the Indo-Pacific, what is very, very important for both the nations and the world over, since almost about 65% of the world's trade passes through Indo-Pacific, 60% of the world's GDP is dependent on Indo-Pacific, 90% of India's trade is Indo-Pacific. So keeping that in view, I think America needs India, India needs America, and the democracies the world over.
Ambassador Meera Shankar is also with us. Ambassador Meera Shankar, irrespective of whether it's Trump 2.0 or Joe Biden, do you expect a policy of continuity as far as the Indo-Pacific is concerned?
I expect that the strategic trajectory of Indo-US relations will continue, because this is propelled by their strategic convergence in the Indo-Pacific and their concerns regarding an increasingly assertive and quite often aggressive China. I think this is going to continue. There may be differences of nuance in terms of what are the issues that each side prioritizes. For instance, President Trump has been very protectionist and unilateralist on economic issues pertaining to India, including the GSP, developing country status, tariffs on steel and aluminium exports from India, H-1B, L-1 visas, all that, which has made it quite difficult for our IT companies. Now, Biden probably would be less unilateralist on trade issues and would negotiate, and hopefully maybe a little more reasonable on the H-1B, L-1 visa issue, because he has closer links to the IT and other services companies which use these visas, American companies, Facebook, Google, Amazon, etc., who use these visas more liberally. He would probably lay more emphasis on democracy and human rights. President Trump would continue to push for America first, hire American, buy American. The strategic relationship would continue. The economic relationship will continue to have issues with President Trump taking unilateral action. Some of those pressures will be there on President Biden as well, because the constituencies in America who feel left behind by globalization, they are the ones exerting pressure for greater trade protectionism and unilateralism by America on economic issues. And those pressures will be there on a Biden presidency as well. But he is more likely to try to negotiate issues in an institutional way. On climate change, you really are going to see a big difference, because President Trump feels that climate change is a hoax. He has walked out of the Paris Agreement. Biden has made this one of the central planks of his policy, saying he will rejoin Paris and work for a more ambitious agenda than the Paris Agreement. He's also pledged that he would like to see the US carbon emissions free by 2050, and an electricity sector which would be carbon emissions free by 2035. A big emphasis on renewable energy innovation and research by Biden. On Iran, you would see a difference, because Biden has pledged to rejoin the nuclear deal with Iran if Iran continues to be in compliance with the agreement. I think these would be the two biggest changes. On China, we are not very sure of Biden's position. Trump has taken tough economic action against China and stepped up also the relationship with Taiwan, sending a cabinet level officer there. He's been tougher in recent years, though in the beginning, he basically said, "Why are we here?" and vacated space by walking out of the Trans-Pacific Agreement, trade agreement. Biden has said that he will not act, that he also feels China's challenge, but he will work with allies and partners to evolve a consensus to pressurize China collectively rather than going down the unilateral route.
Yes.
On the strategic side, I think this whole policy of rebalance towards the Asia Pacific actually was evolved during Obama's term. And it involved redeploying additional naval forces from the NATO theater to the Indo-Pacific theater. It involves strengthening US bases there. It involves strengthening alliance partners there, alliances, and strategic partnerships with countries such as India and Indonesia. The Trans-Pacific Agreement was the economic element of that policy. So I do see Biden following a more predictable and perhaps broad-based policy to try to head China in, though at the same time, they would seek to work with China on global issues such as climate change,
Right.
which they see as a priority.
Ambassador Shankar, I'll request all of you to stay on, please. Ambassador Shankar, Ambassador Trigunayat, and General Kulkarni. But a quick update, Biden 220, Trump 213. So Trump is still trailing as we speak. Time for a very short break. Keep watching this special broadcast. Don't go anywhere.
इस दिवाली अपनों के लिए जगह बनाओ, खुशियों के लिए जगह बढ़ाओ। LIC Housing Finance wishes you a happy and safe Diwali. Stay safe, move on.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD News and DD India.
इस दिवाली अपनों के लिए जगह बनाओ, खुशियों के लिए जगह बढ़ाओ।
LIC Housing Finance wishes you a happy and safe Diwali. Stay safe, move on.
Welcome back. You're watching our continuous coverage on the US presidential polls, and our reporters from the United States are joining us to keep us abreast with the latest developments. Both leaders, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, will be addressing tonight, and it's a close fight. If you look at the numbers, Biden is leading with 220 electoral votes and Trump is trailing with 213. In fact, addressing his supporters in Wilmington, Delaware, Joe Biden had said that election is not over until every ballot is counted. Besides that, Donald Trump has tweeted he has already declared a victory. He said a big win, and he will be addressing tonight. So that's the latest picture as it looks as of now.
Indeed. Right.
I'm optimistic about this. And I want to thank every one of you who came out and voted in this election. And by the way, Chris Coons and the Democrats, congratulations here in Delaware. Pardon? Hey, John, the Gov, yeah, the whole team, man. You've done a great job. I'm grateful to the poll workers, to our volunteers, our canvassers, everyone who participated in this democratic process. And I'm grateful to all of my supporters here in Delaware and all across the nation. Thank you.
All right, I want to welcome Ambassador Neeraj Srivastava on this special broadcast as well. Ambassador Srivastava, welcome to this special broadcast. Good to have you with us. Now, if I can start with you, Ambassador Srivastava, let's talk a bit, if you will, about the turnout. Now, in 2016, the last election was 55.7 or in the region of that figure. In 2012, that was slightly lower at 54%. What do you make of the turnout in this election in 2020, especially given the fact that 100 million plus people had already voted before the election, the polling day, and we're seeing numbers, in large numbers, even this on the 3rd as well. So what do you make of the turnout? Could we see a record turnout in 2020?
Reason is that the corona pandemic has hit the US, causing a great deal of casualties and leading to unemployment, leading to loss of incomes, destruction of businesses, and so on and so forth. So these events have impacted very strongly on people's lives, and that is why I think they want to come out and say or come out and have their say whether they want Trump to continue or they want Biden to be elected. So we are seeing this is a very unusual election because we are seeing it against the background of an event which is a global event, which has not happened in living memory, which has killed hundreds of thousands of people and deeply affected their lives. And that is why people want to come out and they want to have their say. That's the reason I think for the high rate of voter participation in these elections.
Absolutely, yes. Stay with us, Ambassador Neeraj Srivastava. Let's go back to Ira, who is with us from San Francisco, California. Ira, as expected, San Francisco and California, the whole of California has voted overwhelmingly for Democrats with a 67% popular votes going in for Joe Biden. But earlier I was trying to ask you about the picture as it appears in toss-up states in Florida, Texas, Ohio, North Carolina, Georgia and Iowa. The Republicans are either leading or they are projected to have won. These states paved the way for Trump's victory in 2016. What do you think is happening this time around?
Well, certainly a lot of things to consider when you look at the electoral map as it stands right now. And I think both candidates could perhaps have some reason for a bit of optimism. When you looked at the polls coming into this election, Trump has already outperformed those polls, scoring what appears to be decisive victories in places such as Florida and Ohio. But just when it seemed that perhaps we could be seeing a repeat of 2016, Joe Biden showing some perhaps unexpected strength in places such as Arizona and now even Georgia, where the race has not been called yet. So it appears to be just as close as you could imagine that this election would be at this point. It's clearly going to come down to a few key swing states such as Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get a result on those anytime that soon, certainly not tonight. So we're going to have to wait to get real clarity. But we have heard from Joe Biden. He did speak earlier tonight and expressed some optimism, saying we're going to win this thing, and said that all the votes had to be counted, and really promising his supporters that that there was something to look forward to here. So really just a lot of tension. It's been that way this whole election season, and it continues to be that way through the course of this long night.
Absolutely. At the same time, Ira, given the fact that you are in San Francisco in the blue state of California, help our viewers understand the lay of the land as we speak in the neighboring states, and how do the numbers stack up as we speak, and what are you picking up from your sources on the ground as to which way the tally might swing one way or another, either Trump or Biden in other states adjoining California?
Right. Well, the states closest to here, which are in play, as they say, are Arizona and Nevada. The Fox News Network has called Arizona already for Joe Biden, which is a huge victory for his campaign there. We don't know the results of Nevada yet, but that is another state that Joe Biden may need to win. He will definitely need to win that state if he does not win Pennsylvania, I believe. So that is the state that borders California. But when you look at the West Coast of the United States, so we're talking about California, Oregon, and Washington, that is a blue wall. That is a strongly Democratic region.
Yes.
But people here in the Bay Area, the San Francisco Bay Area, despite the lack of suspense as to how California will ultimately vote, very much on the edges of their seats, because the way that our system works, where it doesn't matter necessarily how much a candidate wins by in a state like California, what really matters is the swing states, and the people of California have no control over how people in places like Pennsylvania or Wisconsin ultimately vote.
Yes, Ira, if this goes down to the wire, could Pennsylvania play a key role? It voted for Democrats in 2000, in 2004, in 2008, in 2012, and in 2016 it voted for Republicans. And that's the place where mail-in ballots counting began after the in-person votes counting was done. So this could well be one of the last few states where projections would come in. And right now, as far as the trends now is concerned, there is a lead that Republicans have in Pennsylvania. So could Pennsylvania really play a key role?
Pennsylvania will very likely play a key role, and as well as the remaining swing states, which have not been called yet by the networks who make those sorts of calls. And I think really when you look at Pennsylvania and other places, the questions are now looming about the legal challenges to the votes and to the voting process. The president has long criticized mail-in voting without basis for that criticism, but has falsely claimed that it could be very subjectable to fraud. So now some of those claims are really starting to come into focus when, in fact, the mail-in votes in places like Pennsylvania could ultimately decide the election if that proves to be very close. So really a lot of possibilities here for how this will play out.
All right, on that note, Ira Spitzer in San Francisco, thank you so much once again for joining us on this special broadcast with all your latest inputs. Appreciate it. Thank you. Right, going back to our guests on this special broadcast, if I can start with Ambassador Shankar. Ambassador Shankar, you've served in the U.S. and you understand the U.S. better than many others. Help our viewers understand a number of elections also taking place simultaneously in the U.S. for the Senate, for the House, for governor, and other levels as well. How crucial are the Senate and House elections, and could they change the complexion of the legislature going forward, irrespective of who wins the presidency?
Yes, I think the House election, how the House was with the Democrats
right.
during the last part of President Trump's term, and whether they retain the House, they are expected to, remains to be seen. Similarly, in the Senate, where the Republicans had a majority, in fact, they've had this majority right from the second part of the Obama term.
Right.
And so the Democrats have been hoping to prize that away from them because most of the seats which are up for, it's like our Rajya Sabha, where a certain percentage of seats come up for election on a rotational basis. And most of those seats are Republican seats. So the Democrats are hoping that they can, prize those seats away from the Republicans. Clearly, having the Senate and the House with the presidency makes the president stronger, because the powers of appropriation, the powers of finance are with the House and Senate. And therefore, they can actually thwart or block a president's agenda. You've seen that also when Obama tried to nominate a justice to the Supreme Court.
Right.
He was blocked because they said this is an election year. And because the Republicans had a majority in the Senate, which has to confirm the appointment, they were able to block it. Just as because the Republicans had a majority in the Senate, they were able to confirm, the Chief Justice whom President Trump nominated in the last days of his administration. So clearly, the ability of a president to get his agenda through depends to a large extent on his having a sympathetic House and Senate, or being able to work across the aisle to create a centrist consensus between Republicans and Democrats, which was the case in the past, but which has become exceedingly difficult now that America has become much more politically polarized. The old central, moderate elements of both the Republicans and the Democratic Party, who used to work together to shape this centrist policy consensus, are no longer doing so.
Okay. Ambassador Meera Shankar, if I look at the national exit poll and look at the breakup of voters in terms of gender, ethnicity, age group and education, would like your thoughts on this, because more men have voted for Republicans, more women have voted for Democrats. If you look at ethnicity, then more whites have voted for Republicans, more blacks for Democrats, more Hispanics and Latinos for Democrats, more Asians for Democrats. And in terms of the age group, the younger you are voting for Democrats. The older you are voting for Republicans. Educational level, those with college graduation degrees have overwhelmingly voted for Democrats, and those without a college degree are tied at 49% of popular votes. All on expected lines?
Yes, I think to some extent these are on expected lines, going by the trends in the last election. When President Obama was elected, I think there were many elements within America. We thought that this was now a post-racial America, which had overcome its terrible traumas and divisions of race. But there were sections of the American electorate which didn't accept that election, and which have always had concerns about the whites have had concerns about their continued demographic dominance in America, and therefore dominance in the polity and the economy. So those were factors which came very much into play during President Trump's first election. And now we've seen that racial divides are sharper than ever, with the police having taken forceful action against African Americans much more frequently, that having led to protests and demonstrations. And so race is very much at the center of the American agenda this time. Of course, the pandemic is also uppermost in people's mind, as is revival of the economy and getting back the jobs which have been lost during the economic downturn. But there are some interesting shifts from last time. And you can see the Hispanic community has been divided. They haven't voted uniformly. The Cuban Americans, for instance, in Florida, or those who came from Nicaragua, they have voted Republican because they fled communist regimes and have a strong anti-communist, anti-socialist agenda. Whereas many of the Mexican or other Hispanic communities, the Puerto Ricans, have voted with the Democrats. So it's not been uniform. And that has also traditionally been the case. The Cuban Americans have been more conservative. But amongst older people who had voted overwhelmingly for Trump last time, many have shifted towards Biden because of the concern regarding the pandemic and the belief that President Trump has not handled it well. This has been his weakest point, his handling of the pandemic. So some shifts in the communities. Young people have come out in larger numbers than last time. Last time, there was not that much participation by young people or by African Americans. They had not come out in the numbers that was expected. This time they have come out in larger numbers. So there are some shifts. You're also seeing that women, last time, non-university educated women, particularly white women, had voted with Trump. And many university educated white women had also voted with Trump. This time you're seeing a shift in the women's vote. Many have been put off by, President Trump's mannerisms, his personality, and the manner in which, he's alleged to have behaved towards women in the past. So you're seeing some shifts in the university-educated women's vote, whether white or non-white. Overall, President Trump retains his rural constituencies. He retains the southern states, which again is an interesting shift in history, because the southern states were always Democrat. Given that it was a Republican President, Abraham Lincoln, who abolished slavery. So they were traditionally Democrat, but in recent years, with the social conservatism of the Republicans, they have been able to turn most of the southern states towards them. So that's an interesting historical shift. And in this election, you're seeing that too, with Trump retaining Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, and of course the Sun Belt states of Texas, which has historically been Republican, and Florida. The Democrats retain the West and East Coast, the liberal states, and the other states such as Minnesota, and perhaps might be shifting the election in Arizona. Now, the crucial thing...
Ambassador Shankar, hold your thought, please. We are getting live visuals of President Trump about to speak. Let's listen in.
Thank you very much, please, sir. Thank you. This is without question the latest news conference I've ever had.
We love you.
I appreciate it very much, and I want to thank the American people for their tremendous support. Millions and millions of people voted for us tonight, and a very sad group of people is trying to disenfranchise that group of people, and we won't stand for it. We will not stand for it. want to thank the First Lady, my entire family, and Vice President Pence, Mrs. Pence, for being with us, all three of us. And we were getting ready for a big celebration. We were winning everything, and all of a sudden it was just called off. The results tonight have been phenomenal, and we are getting ready. I mean, literally, we were just all set to get outside and just celebrate something that was so beautiful, so good. Such a vote, such a success. The citizens of this country have come out in record numbers. This is a record. There's never been anything like it. To support our incredible movement, we won states that we weren't expected to win. Florida, we didn't win it. We won it by a lot. We won the great state of Ohio. We won Texas. We won Texas by 700,000 votes, and they don't even include it in the tabulations. It's also clear that we have won Georgia. We're up by 2.5% or 117,000 votes with only 7% left. They're never going to catch us. They can't catch us. Likewise, we've clearly won North Carolina, where we're up 1.4%. or 77,000 votes with only approximately 5% left. They can't catch us. We also, if you look and you see, Arizona, we have a lot of life in that. And somebody declared that it was a victory for, and maybe it will be. I mean, that's possible. But certainly there were a lot of votes out there that we could get, because we're now just coming into what they call Trump territory. I don't know what you call it, but these were friendly Trump voters, and that could be overturned. The gentleman that called it, I watched tonight, he said, well, we think it's fairly unlikely that he could catch. Well, fairly unlikely? And we don't even need it. We don't need that. That was just a state that if we would have gotten it, it would have been nice, Arizona. But there's a possibility, maybe even a good possibility. In fact, since I saw that originally, it's been changed and the numbers have substantially come down just in a small amount of votes. So we want that obviously to stay in play. But most importantly, we're winning Pennsylvania by a tremendous amount of votes. Think of this. We're up 690,000 votes in Pennsylvania, 690,000. These aren't even close. It's not like, oh, it's close. With 64% of the vote in, it's going to be almost impossible to catch. And we're coming into good Pennsylvania areas where they happen to like your president. I mean, it's so we'll probably expand that. We're winning Michigan by, I'll tell you, I looked at the numbers. I said, whoa. I said, wow, that's a lot. By almost 300,000 votes. And 65% of the vote is in. And we're winning Wisconsin. Now, so we're winning. We don't need all of them. We need, because when you add Texas in, which wasn't added, I spoke with the really wonderful governor of Texas just a little while ago, and Greg Abbott, he said, congratulations. He called me to congratulate me on winning Texas. I mean, we won Texas. I don't think they finished quite the tabulation, but there's no way. And it was almost complete, but he congratulated me. Then he said, by the way, what's going on? I've never seen anything like this. Can I tell you what? Nobody has. So we won by 107,000 votes with 81% of the vote. That's Michigan. So when you take those three states in particular, And you take all of the others. I mean, we have so many. We had such a big night. You just take a look at all of these states that we've won tonight, and then you take a look at the kind of margins that we've won them by. And all of a sudden, it's not like we're up 12 votes and we have 60% left. We won states, and all of a sudden, I said, what happened to the election? It's off. And we have all these announcers saying, what happened? And then they said, oh, because you know what happened? They knew they couldn't win, so they said, let's go to court. And did I predict this, Newt? Did I say this? I've been saying this from the day I heard they were going to send out tens of millions of ballots. I said exactly, because either they were going to win, or if they didn't win, they'll take us to court. So Florida was a tremendous victory, 377,000. Texas, as we said. Ohio, think of this. Ohio, a tremendous state, a big state. I love Ohio. We won by 8.1%, 461. Think of it. Almost 500,000 votes. North Carolina, big victory with North Carolina. And so we won there. We lead by 76,000 votes with almost nothing left. And all of a sudden, everything just stopped. This is a fraud on the American public. This is an embarrassment to our country. We were getting ready to win this election. Frankly, we did win this election. So our goal now is to ensure the integrity for the good of this nation. This is a very big moment. This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court. We want all voting to stop. We don't want them to find any ballots at 4 o'clock in the morning and add them to the list, okay? It's a very sad moment. To me, this is a very sad moment, and we will win this, and as far as I'm concerned, we already have won it. So I just want to thank you, and I want to thank all of our support. I want to thank all of the people that worked with us, and Mr. Vice President, say a few words, please. Please.
I want to join you in thanking more than 60 million Americans who have already cast their vote for 4 more years for President Donald Trump in the White House. And while the votes continue to be counted, we're going to remain vigilant, as the President said. The right to vote has been at the center of our democracy since the founding of this nation, and we're going to protect the integrity of the vote. But I really believe with all of my heart, with the extraordinary margins, Mr. President, that you've inspired in the states that you just described, and the way that you launched this movement across the country to make America great again, I truly do believe, as you do, that we are on the road to victory and we will make America great again. Thank you, Mr. President. America great again. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, big news coming in from Washington, D.C. this moment. President Trump has just finished giving a speech, combative as ever, not conciliatory at all. He spoke of a celebration that is due. But if I can quickly go across to my colleague, William Denslow, who is waiting by in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Will, if you're with us, quick overview of what you made of President Trump's remarks there. He has spoken about the big win for him in Florida, Ohio, Texas. He spoke about a record turnout in Florida in particular. Also going on to literally call the election in his favor in those crucial states such as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia included. But the most important takeaway, if you ask me, Will, he's saying, and I quote him here, frankly, we did win this election, unquote. Again, a quote, a major fraud on the nation. He says we want to protect the integrity of the vote, and he wants to move the U.S. Supreme Court to protect his vote and others' vote, and also to stop all voting going forward as well, especially postal ballots and mail-in ballots. William, fill us in on what you made of those remarks by President Trump.
Well, this is certainly something that the president has been threatening to do for months, of course. Really, over the last number of months, he's been saying that mail-in ballots have a huge risk of being a fraud. That has been dismissed by analysts that say there's very little to no proof that there are fraudulent activities associated with these mail-in ballots. And the significance of this is, of course, this comes just a few minutes after we heard from former Vice President Joe Biden, who essentially said that he had good feelings and was confident when it comes to a few absolutely critical states, including Michigan, as well as here in Wisconsin. The reason for that significance is if we look at how a state like Wisconsin is currently reporting, President Trump is currently enjoying a lead, but what we are expecting in the next couple of hours is a huge slew of absentee votes to be recorded here in the city of Milwaukee. Now, why that's important is because Milwaukee is the biggest city in the state of Wisconsin, and it predominantly, historically, votes Democrat. So many analysts are looking at that kind of cachet of absentee votes that are set to be released that could potentially swing a pivotal state like Wisconsin more into Joe Biden's favor if indeed the Democrats get their wish, and a number of those early votes do indeed tilt in the Democrats' favor.
Donald Trump has clearly said that his side will be moving the Supreme Court, and this was widely anticipated. Now, having said that, if this moves into court, this could take weeks together, because that's what happened in 2000 in the battle between George Bush as well as Al Gore. Al Gore moved the Florida Supreme Court, that ruled in its favor, and then we saw how George Bush moved the U.S. Supreme Court. That finally said that the recount needs to stop, so it took many weeks. Are we really expecting a replay of that in terms of the number of weeks going ahead?
Well, I think it's important first to see exactly how things play out in these individual states like Pennsylvania, like Wisconsin in the coming hours, if not coming few days, considering the fact that the Supreme Court has, in these instances, already weighed in to at least a certain extent. Here in Wisconsin, for example, the Supreme Court has already ruled that any absentee ballots that are received after 8 p.m. on November 3rd, so several hours ago, will not be counted. This after Democrats wanted up to a 6-day extension for those mail-in ballots to be counted as long as they were postmarked by November 3rd. Looking at Pennsylvania, though, the Supreme Court ruled that up to a couple days after November 3rd, so later in the week, they will still allow these mail-in ballots to be processed and to be counted in the overall tally. So I think in these states it'll be important and interesting to see exactly how they're tabulated going forward, where the numbers lie, before we can talk about the next steps when it comes to potential of the Supreme Court getting involved once again. But clearly, as we can hear from the president, he believes that there is an injustice and something that he wants to see moved up to the highest courts in the land.
And also, William, what do you make of the turnout in Wisconsin and also across the U.S.? In 2016, for instance, we saw 55% voting across the U.S., which was slightly more than the voter turnout in 2012. Now, expectations are high that the voter turnout will be more than what we saw in 2016. What are you learning from people, interacting with people on the ground and officials there in Wisconsin and also across to help our viewers understand the voter turnout that could be the likely figure across the US at the national level as well?
Absolutely. First of all, for the Democrats, one thing that we're already gleaming is that Dane County, which is home to Madison, Wisconsin, which here in the state, that overwhelmingly and historically votes Democrat. What we saw is huge amount of Democratic support in that county, in the region of 80%, exceeding what we saw in 2016. That's seen as a huge plus as far as the Democrats are concerned. As far as the Republicans are concerned, they're very much looking to more rural communities. Now, 18 of the 22 counties that were flipped from Democrat to Republican in 2016, they were in rural areas. The Republican Party very much hoping for a similar success this time around. Now, all eyes are very much focusing on Milwaukee. In the next couple of hours, we're expecting a huge tranche of mail-in ballots to be counted here in Milwaukee. Democrats will be certainly hoping for a huge turnout that they hope could see them over the line. Republicans are hoping that they've chipped away at that normally solid blue base here in the city of Milwaukee.
Yes, and well, if Republicans indeed win Wisconsin, then what really would you attribute this victory to? Because it's been a Democratic territory since 2000 to 2012, before Donald Trump changed it to red territory in 2016.
Absolutely. Well, there are a couple of really key issues in the minds of voters. Of course, Wisconsin is currently third in the nation when it comes to COVID cases per capita. Now, for Democrats, that certainly fueled their support, that they think that President Trump has handled the pandemic poorly. In the minds of Republican supporters that we've been speaking to here on the ground, though, there's huge concern about what a Joe Biden victory would mean for the US economy and for their livelihoods going forward. They're really concerned about what a Democratic win would mean when it comes to putting people into more stringent lockdowns, to cutting off the economy. They don't want to see that. That, for many voters, is why they want to see Donald Trump re-win the state and re-win the US presidential election. The other key issue in the minds of voters is that of law and order. Of course, in August, we saw the shooting of Jacob Blake here in Wisconsin, the city of Kenosha. President Trump, since that moment, has been campaigning on a strong issue of law and order. For Joe Biden, though, the message has been one of systemic change and racial reform in the country, and one as well of unity.
Absolutely. Thank you, Will, for bringing us those updates live from Wisconsin. Well, we'll take a breather at this point in time, but our rolling coverage on the US presidential elections will continue on Doordarshan India. Don't go anywhere.
इस दिवाली अपनों के लिए जगह बनाओ, खुशियों के लिए जगह बढ़ाओ। LIC Housing Finance wishes you a happy and safe Diwali. Stay safe, move on.
As the day unfolds and news and events take shape, we get you complete coverage of every news breaking in, tracking new developments as they happen. Midday Prime English, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. on DD News and DD India.
इस दिवाली अपनों के लिए जगह बनाओ, खुशियों के लिए जगह बढ़ाओ। LIC Housing Finance wishes you a happy and safe Diwali. Stay safe, move on.
Welcome back. You're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. We're calling it the race for the White House. And if I can just quickly recap the latest news coming in from the US this moment, President Trump has just spoken. He says the Republican Party and he will move the US Supreme Court to seek a stop on all voting. He says all voting needs to be stopped pronto because he says he wants to protect the quote-unquote integrity of the vote. He says, frankly, we did win this election, and he says it's a major fraud on the nation in the manner in which he accuses the Democrats of stealing the vote, so to speak. He was combative as ever, and he says he has won Florida, Ohio, Texas. He also claimed victory in the Rust Belt states of Michigan, Wisconsin, also Pennsylvania, as well as North Carolina as well. So things are moving fast on the ground in the US as we speak. Let me quickly reintroduce our guest joining us for the second hour on this broadcast. With us is Ambassador Anil Trigunath. Also with us is Ambassador Neeraj Srivastav. Also with us is Lieutenant General Sanjay Kulkarni. And joining us this moment is Dr. Harinder Sekhon. Dr. Sekhon, welcome to this broadcast. Now, we've been talking about how the US views the world. We've spoken about how India sees its ties with the US. Take a moment and help our viewers understand how would other countries around the world look at the US election, namely Putin in Moscow or a Xi Jinping in Beijing, or for that matter, even the Iranian leadership in Tehran as we speak. So put this into context for our viewers. Why is the US election so crucial for many a country, many a capital around the world?
As the world's only superpower or the most important country in the world, whatever happens in the US and who gets elected is of great interest to all countries around the world. The US has, the last 4 years of Trump have seen a reordering of US priorities, and what we've been witnessing is big power politics, big power rivalries, and shifting geopolitics. We have seen an assertive Russia since 2017, and initially one thought that US-Russia relations would be more cordial, would be more amiable with Trump. But unfortunately, because of the this issue of Russian meddling in US elections in 2016, there was some kind of pressure, and Trump and Putin were never really able to mend bridges. There is a responsibility amongst these two erstwhile superpowers, and they have started some kind of a START negotiation to limit their nuclear stockpile. So I think Putin would naturally look at a Trump victory because he feels, though, if you remember, Obama had also thought he would be able to reset relations with Russia, but it did not happen. So Putin would look to a Trump presidency. China, of course, is going to be probably happier with Biden because they feel that Biden would be less rhetorical than Trump, and they would be able to do business.
So, Dr. Sekhon, if what you're saying is correct, what Trump said a few days ago, is that fair when he said that if Biden wins, China wins?
It's not really fair because, see, that's all election talk. Biden, as vice president, initially even Trump, when he got elected, he also tried to do the outreach to Xi Jinping, but he always called China the money manipulator. But what Trump said about Biden is election talk. Biden realizes that the world has changed in the last 4 years. China has emerged, and both parties recognize that China threatens US power and US strategic interests, especially in the Asia Pacific. China has been aggressive. China has taken advantage of the pandemic to further expand its aggressive footprint in Europe and in Asia and in Africa. So to say that Biden can afford to ignore that, no US president can afford to ignore China's strategic assertiveness. So I don't think Biden is going to be very soft. And I think what we'll see is, because if you remember, that the whole US rebalance and the US pivot strategy emerged when Biden was vice president.
Yes.
It came up during the Obama presidency. So the China policy is not going to change much, whoever gets elected. It is Iran which is going to be interesting, because if it's a Biden presidency, he is going to try and revive the JCPOA, because we would see some shifting dynamics in West Asia, whether Trump comes or Biden comes. That's where the real difference would be visible. But for India also, I think it's going to be bipartisan support and business as usual. But of course, the nuances and the pressure points might change.
Right.
Trade is going to be a tricky situation for both of us, with either Trump or Biden, because whoever comes is now going to look at reconciliation and reconstruction, bringing the jobs back. We've heard Trump say that make America great again. He has said again twice. So he's aware of the fact that whatever gains he may have got during his 4 years have been negated, have been washed away because of the pandemic. And this is a very serious and a real challenge for America to shore up manufacturing, to create jobs all over again, and also to build the bridges in America and provide affordable health care without going back to the Obama model. He's aware of black lives, race, all these issues. So I think even Trump would need to give some attention to the social issues and economic issues within America.
Ambassador Trigunayat, on the trade aspect between India and the United States, for months together, India had been hoping that there would be at least a mini trade deal between India and the United States after additional tariffs were imposed by the US on India. We've dragged each other to the WTO since, but we haven't seen a mini trade deal so far. So do you expect one under Trump 2.0 or under Biden?
Well, I think that there is no other option but to continue to work together. What happened, during President Trump's visit to India, it was expected that perhaps there would be some kind of a mini deal that would be signed, but the two leaders agreed to continue because there are certain basic differences. But if Trump comes back again and it's a Trump 2.0, what you would see is a greater focus on opening the Indian markets and the kind of issues that they have been always raising with us. And that will be, the USA will be probably far more sanguine about these than it has been until recently. But at the same time, they also realize the strategic importance of India, and I believe that they need to work together. I mean, because see, they cannot dissociate the trade from the defense deals that they are enjoying. And you know that in the United States, from California to Connecticut, this is the defense industry which really dictates the policy of the country in many ways across the board. So we'll have to play one against the other. I mean, if we are going to be one of the major consumers of the US defense equipment and they are ready to support us after all the agreements that have been signed in the meantime, and we have become truly global, strategic, comprehensive partner, then obviously, I mean, whether it is against China or whether it is against between the two simply on transactional basis, it has to be a give and take on both sides. But I think that the Indian negotiating side will have to really gear up for various kinds of unpredictable sentiments or the issues or the demands that might come up. For example, you remember Harley Davidson, we don't buy so much. It's not such a great consumption in India, but it was made into a very big issue by President Trump because that country essentially is run by lobbies, whether the pressure groups, interest groups, and so obviously that is what really goes ahead. Secondly, since if it's Trump 2.0, and as Harinder mentioned, I mean, obviously the manufacturing is going to be for both of them. They have realized that this is absolutely imperative. They cannot do without. But at the same time, the Biden would probably be more open to negotiations and being a bit more reasonable in that sense compared to, I think, the Trump's trade team.
Right. If I can bring in General Kulkarni in the discussion. General Kulkarni, you are the military person, the military brain on this panel. So I want to probe you a bit on the American policy towards the Indo-Pacific in particular under a Trump 2.0 or a Biden in the White House. What do you make of their policy towards the Indo-Pacific and their policies going forward as well because India has an abiding interest in the Indo-Pacific region, given what we know about our relations with some countries in the neighborhood and beyond?
You know, watching this interesting elections in US, I'm reminded of the academy days when there would be a nice boxing bout and the referee wouldn't know who had won. Is it the red who has won or the blue who has won? He would lift both the hands, waiting for the judgment to come so that he could bring one down immediately to say, well, the one is the one. That's the kind of situation that we have in the United States. Right. Both claiming victories. But whatever be it, for India as a seat, I don't think there'll be much of a change. It won't be much of a change. But whatever it be the pandemic, or you can see the racial divide, or you can see the trade, or you can see the polarization that has taken place in USA, or unemployment that has caught up with USA. All said and done, America today, what was seen to be slight sunsetting seems to have been on the rise now. See, America is being counted, and that is what is important, and that is what Trump wanted America to be counted, and America is being counted, there is no doubt. But for the racial divide, again, when we say sabka saath and sabka vishwas, that is where it is important, and that is where Trump probably is on the back foot in terms of polarization is concerned. But to India as such, it really doesn't matter who wins, because there is a strategic convergence. There is a need for us. We have a shared strategic value, kind of agreements that have been signed. America feels that yes, it needs India. India feels definitely we now need to have a relationship. Right. Everything can't be done. But yes, battle with or the disagreements with China or whatever be it, so that is our battle. We have to fight that battle. Nobody is going to come to our rescue as regards Eastern Ladakh is concerned, or as regards LAC is concerned, or as regards LOC is concerned. It's ours, and we have to fight it out.
No, absolutely. Yes, we have to fight our battles, General Kulkarni, but look at the kind of support that we've got under the Trump administration on the issue of China, because they've constantly backed India in this border dispute at Ladakh. And Mike Pompeo, when he came over, said that the CPC is following its malicious designs. So we've seen a very, very strident Trump administration as far as its China policy is concerned, isn't it? And that goes in our favor.
Definitely. And that is what matters. All said and done, America seems to be standing with India. Chinese can't do what they want to do. You see Indo-Pacific now. In entire Indo-Pacific, the very fact that we have a Quad, we have an agreement which is there with United States, Japan, Australia, India, people are looking at France and others joining in. That itself is indicative enough to give China, well, it would lose its sleep knowing fully well that if these democracies have come together, there is something that China needs to look at it, needs to do some introspection, cannot just carry on expansionism, cannot do its wolf warrior tactics everywhere and anywhere. That's a very important thing. And Chinese themselves seem to have realized it. But all said and done, China decided to take advantage of what was happening the world over with what it did in the South China Sea. It could not have converted artificial islands into airstrips. How come the whole world said, how come they never said anything? How come the neighbors were quiet? So all said and done, China was able to assert itself in the world politics in a manner that it wanted to, slowly and gradually. And today with pandemic, it seems to be now asserting itself aggressively to see, let us see what can America do, or what can the democracies do. Let us see what can India do. If we have to be a powerful nation in Asia, then let us see whether India can stand up to it. But the very fact that today India could stand up to China, India could show itself that yes, it counts, and therefore the Chinese are on the back foot right now. You find the Indo-Pacific, all the democracies have got together. They have now put China in check. Yes, at purpose, I would say the very fact that we have America today with us, the very fact that the various agreements are there with America, if all of them play, we really have a very big advantage, because what matters ultimately is knowledge is power. And when you know what's on the other side of the hill, and that is half the battle won. So with the kind of, I would say the strength that India has, and the ability to get to know what is on the other side of the hill, and the Chinese being isolated gradually, it's a real win-win situation. And with America on the side of India, and all the democracies standing with India, and the Indo-Pacific insistence of America for freedom of navigation, That is what it is. Values, democracies, to ensure that nobody can have his way and insist on wanting freedom of navigation to be stopped. All of it, I think we are the beneficiaries. And what within the Indian Ocean region, we are the country that really counts. The Malacca Strait is a dilemma. It makes it difficult for China. We may not be able to do everything, but whatever it be, the very fact that CPEC is coming is indicative that the Chinese do feel the pinch of Malacca, and that is why they're looking at coming all the way from Kunjara Pass and getting into Wada. Why are they doing that? It's such an expensive thing. Nobody will be able to transport oil the way they're wanting to do it. But they're looking at an alternative because they have deep pockets today. They're looking for an alternative. But yes, China is in check. If India and Russia, I would just say a second, Russia is something which is, not being able to decide for itself, or the Chinese overall, after a long time, seem to have an upper hand with their relationship with Russia is concerned. Russia is a good friend of India, but all said and done, today, India, America, Australia, Japan, the Quad being extended, the relationship that is going up, and what the ambassador just said, that the global strategic partnership that's emerging, India is being seen as a world market. The Chinese are feeling the heat of India's relationship with America. In that context, I would rate the relationship. Trump really brought that up in a manner that would shake China up nice and proper, without to say that, look, you try and do something, we stand with India. And it has been with Taiwan, and that is where it matters. I think
indeed
Trump has stood with India, and definitely we have to say thank you to Trump on that count. Whoever comes as the president will have strategic convergence with India, will definitely we have shared strategic interest, and they will stand by India, because China is indulging in expansionism, which I'm sure the democracies the world over don't like it.
Ambassador Srivastav, I want to touch upon a point that was flagged by Dr. Harinder Sekho. And thank you, Dr. Sekho, for flagging that, because we seem to have forgotten about that issue altogether in this discussion. And that is due with the 2016 allegation of Russian meddling in the US election. Now, cut to 2020 with a lot of rhetoric in the run-up to the election. But looking at things as they stand today, as we speak right now, is meddling allegation a thing of the past, and that both parties, the Republicans and Trump, are looking for other issues, and they have put this on the back burner, so to speak. It's no longer an issue that polarizes the two political parties in the US.
Well, you see, they may have alleged that Russia meddled in the US elections in 2016, and the Democrats tried very hard to find, some proof of that. But ultimately, at the end of the day, they could not produce even one shred of evidence to prove Russian meddling. So, so really, without proof, you can make any allegation, but without proof, it's of no use. Secondly, the second thing which you said, about the two parties, that is something which is more serious, because I find that at this point in time, both Biden and Trump are claiming victory.
Right.
And that is not good as far as democratic values are concerned. And Mr. Trump has gone ahead and said that in his tweet, he said that the election was being stolen, first thing. Then he said, we have won, we are going to go to the Supreme Court. Now, the thing I want to just remind all the viewers that an election result is not final till it is final, till the last vote is counted.
Absolutely. Ambassador Neeraj, we'll take that forward in a bit, but Ira Spitzer, our correspondent, is joining us now from California. Ira, we've heard from Donald Trump already. He says the votes should be not be counted any longer. The counting should stop forthwith. He says he'll be moving the Supreme Court, whereas Joe Biden is saying that it's not my place or Trump's place to declare the winner of this election. It is the voters' place. So they are head-to-head. The face-off continues, and it is far from over, it seems. So all eyes would now be when courts open tomorrow in America, isn't it?
Well, it's almost a nightmare scenario, really, for the American election. What many people had feared, that we would see a closely contested election and that one candidate, presumably the President Donald Trump, would declare victory early before the votes are counted. Well, that is exactly what we saw. I would say that the press conference was surreal, except we've seen just so many surreal moments over the 4 years of the Trump presidency that it felt sort of shockingly normal to hear him say that. But it certainly opens up a lot of possibilities here for legal challenges, potentially, to finishing out the counting of the votes in those swing states. It also certainly will affect Americans' confidence in the entire process here. I think people on both sides right now are feeling like they are perhaps not getting a fair shake from the votes because of the allegations of fraud from the president's side, or from the Democrats, the suggestions that that President Trump is trying to disenfranchise them by not allowing this vote counting to continue. So really, I think it's going to be a difficult few days here in the United States.
Indeed. Ira, as we speak, I'm looking at the map of the US on my screens here, and I can see many red and blue states, but also pink and light blue states as well. Now, viewers, those pink states is the pink color used to denote the leads, not the win or the result of that particular state. And I was taken in, Ira, by what Trump had to say there. He spoke about how he has, quote unquote, won the states such as Florida, Ohio, and Texas. But he went a step further and almost called the election in his favor in those crucial states, including the Rust Belt, Michigan, Wisconsin, including Pennsylvania and North Carolina, Georgia included. So what did you make of that assertion? Now, as you mentioned, neither Biden nor Trump have seemed to be conciliatory at all. Trump was combative as ever. But what did you make of his claim of having won those crucial states? Because Pennsylvania might well seal the fate for either Trump or Biden.
Right. Well, he sort of started, as you mentioned, with the states such as Texas and Florida, where it appears that Trump legitimately is on a path to a victory and doing better than many had predicted in those states. But then he slowly shifted to the states where it is not so clear. And certainly in Georgia, at least when he spoke, there were certainly questions about whether he was actually going to win that state. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, we don't know who won the state, but when you listen to President Trump, it does seem like a foregone conclusion in his telling of it. And I think what that all sort of amounts to is controlling the narrative around this election. And, we're seeing that coming from both candidates, not just from the president, but perhaps with President Trump obviously going a step further and making a declaration of victory in the election. But certainly when America wakes up tomorrow, it's already after midnight here in California. On the East Coast, it's the middle of the night. So when the United States wakes up tomorrow and sort of tries to unpack what has happened here, I think the presentations from the candidates and just the perception of fairness or the lack of fairness will really start to become core issues in how people are viewing what we're going to see over the course of the next few days, with either the votes being counted or the votes stopped from counting by a potential intervention from the Supreme Court.
I was particularly intrigued by Trump's choice of words. He said, and I'm quoting him here, "Frankly, we did win this election," unquote. Now, I'm taken in by his choice of using the past tense for saying that we did win this election. But what does it mean? Is he saying, what is the implication here? That we won and that people are not calling the election in my favor, or that we won and probably lost?
Well, I think the implication here, and it's a great point that you raised, he didn't say we're winning this election or we're going to win.
He didn't say we won or we are winning. He says, frankly, we did win this election. And I wonder why he said that.
Yes, and that choice of words really is indicative of this strategy of stopping the vote count and implying, likely without basis, that any further vote counting will introduce some element of fraud into the process. So really saying, and this isn't a surprise, he has signaled that he wanted the vote counting to stop at the end of Election Day, but now it's become serious because we've reached the end of Election Day, and he has come out and said, basically, the election is over, I won, and one way or the other, this is going to have to be accepted. Now, of course, many people don't accept that, and we'll have to see what happens on a legal basis.
Absolutely. Ira,
after Trump's remarks.
This is a close election because currently Biden is leading by 7 points or 7 electoral votes at 220 to 213. If you look at the percentage of popular votes with Biden, it is a little less than 50%, 49.8%. With Trump, it is 48.6%. The pre-poll surveys spoke about this 7 to 8 points lead as well, and we are seeing that happen. So this has been a very polarized election, and that is evident in the results as well. There's a sharp divide between Republicans and Democrats, isn't it?
The divide in America appears to be as wide as ever. This has been an ugly presidential campaign, a campaign where we've seen certainly the president use tactics such as attacking members of Joe Biden's families that in previous campaigns might have been off limits. So there is an animosity, not just among the candidates themselves, but also among their supporters. We've seen violence over the past few months between supporters of the president and supporters of protests, for instance, from the Black Lives Matter movement. And this is all really building up to this election day where we had hoped perhaps to have a decisive result where we could say, okay, the country has voted. We have a president, but that is not the case. We have an extremely close election right now, which hasn't been decided despite the fact that all the votes have been cast.
All right, on that note, Ira Spitzer in San Francisco, thank you once again for joining us. As Ira says, this might well be decided by the court, not the vote. All right, time for a very short break. Keep watching this special broadcast. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, thanks guys.